Before we start today's roundtable, I want to give special thanks to Checkster, our group sponsor. Checkster has become well known in the recruiting industry by providing a platform that easily captures reference checks in the hiring process. I myself have been a customer of theirs for years. I use a reference checking tool for all of my new hires. However, Checkster has now released a new product suite called Insights. This new product suite is really what has excited me to have Checkster as the group sponsor. With Insights, the Checkster platform now covers employees from cradle to grave and not just reference checking, starting when they apply, going to offer, through onboarding, then covering their work at your company, and then to the end with exit interviews. It's an easy to use, easy to understand way of giving and getting feedback from your peers. Checkster's simple goal: to build more productive and passionate teams. Now, if this concept of getting insights from your peers regarding your work sounds familiar, it should, because that's the simple goal of this group: connecting, communicating, collaborating. Support me, support the group. Follow the link below, recruiting.org/Checkster. This will take you to a landing page to sign up for a quick demo. If you are just thinking about automating your reference checking process, it'll be well worth your time. But I encourage you to check out the full Insights suite. I'd love to find out if you feel the way I feel about it. Now let's get to today's roundtable.
Good morning. I am Christina Sharif, your moderator this morning. You can catch us here every second Tuesday of the month at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, talking everything diversity, equity, and inclusion. Today, I am joined by John, Yvonne, Lalita, and Connor, who will introduce themselves as we begin talking. But school is back in session, folks, at least for most people. And I thought it would be highly appropriate today to talk a little bit about how you can optimize your diversity recruiting efforts and sort of implement some of those efforts into your university recruiting strategy. So there's lots of ways that we're going to cover today. The goal for all of these sessions, of course, is for you to be able to walk away with some actionable steps that you can use immediately. There are no dumb questions, so please feel free to leave your questions, comments, concerns within the chat. We'll try to get to your question throughout the conversation. Today's conversation is going to be a bit different than how we usually conduct it. So normally each panelist sort of talks about something very specific, and then we get a little bit more conversational as we go along. Today, we're going to start off conversational. And so if there's anything that you feel like we're not hitting on that you'd like to know about, please be sure to leave your comments in the chat and we'll get to it. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining the panel. So we talked a little bit ahead of time around different strategies that we're using within our university recruiting strategy to make sure that we're being intentional about finding diverse groups of students. Tell me a little bit about what you've done so far. What are your strategies looking like? Oh, and if you don't mind, introduce yourself before the first time that you start talking.
I can start. Lalita Gandakota. I am the head of talent acquisition for the US and EMEA, and have actually just a month ago taken over responsibility for the university program here in North America, but I also have responsibility for our global TA initiatives, as well as managing our global search practice, our executive search practice. So in terms of some of the strategies, I think that in the past, we've been really dependent on being sort of boots on the ground on campus. And I really find that the Zoom environment has allowed us to expand our reach and reach students that we may not have been able to on campus. So really had some great success with working with fraternities, sororities, the HBCUs, the HSIs. We hosted a Micron specific career fair. So we didn't go actually on campus to Howard. We actually invited 12 HBCUs to our own Micron career fair, had a number of sort of learning events prior to that, including sort of amending your LinkedIn profile, how to actually attend a career fair. We had a couple of those before we actually had our virtual career fair. And then we had an invite only dinner with the students, with about 150 of them, where we just sent them Uber Eats gift certificates and had a number of our executives there. And that really had a huge impact, because it wasn't our traditional executive series where we had them sort of do the PR pitch for the company and a little talk about the technology. It was really about how the issues that they are navigating as young African Americans in a universe that's just gone mad. So much more authentic conversation, much more, I felt much more organic, and it really touched the students. And we had an actual conversion rate from that event of almost 75% of the offers extended turned into full-time accepts.
That's excellent. So just really quickly, had a question from the audience. What is an HBCU? I feel like we should level the playing field so everyone knows. HBCU is historically Black colleges and universities. There's several throughout the US. So thanks for that, Lalita. So the goal for today is for us to talk like really specifically around the steps that you took. So for folks that are sort of watching that don't know, like, how do you set up an event? So Lalita, how were you able to set up events with, I know that you did your own career fair, but how were you able to set up events with all of these HBCUs? Did you have to, like, who did you contact? Not necessarily a name, but what's the general role of the person that you would contact in order to set something like this up?
I guess we were really lucky, to be very honest, Christina, because we didn't contact anyone, because as any of you who have tried to do this in the recent past, the poor HBCUs are getting inundated with requests and with interest, which is sad in a way, but given, yeah, anyways, not to belabor that, but what we actually did is we used LinkedIn. And so we created what are called campaign recs. We use a tool called Eightfold, which is an AI tool that sits on top of our ATS called Success Factors. And we created campaign recs, which we created links on LinkedIn with. So we had a little beautiful invitation on LinkedIn. We had links to the event, which was actually a Microsoft form. We collected all the information via the Microsoft form for, in terms of personal information, phone number, email, etc. We had them upload their resumes, and then we screened the resumes to feed into the invite. So we actually, across the country in 3 days, we had 720 folks interested, and we ended up with about 300 invited to the fair.
Amazing. Can you add the information for some of the software tools that you used into the chat?
Absolutely.
I think folks will be interested. Fantastic. Thank you for that. Is there anyone else who's had any luck with either planning campus events, especially like in this COVID world where nobody's on campus? How have we done with getting in touch with diverse groups of students at the colleges?
I mean, I would suggest for us here is definitely, like Lalita said, going to the HBCUs, mainly Howard. That has been the strategy for my current company. But in the past, in terms of just even a virtual in-person, reaching out to the, let's say the Diversity Career Center, for instance. There's always somebody there that's a representative for colleges that will get back to you in terms of, the resources you need to penetrate the campus for diverse candidates. But then also just using the social media handles on LinkedIn, even on Twitter. A lot of these universities have those information. So maybe say, directing specifically to somebody in terms of getting a specific point of contact. Looking, if you are basically have a target or you want to do just a blanket address, if you're looking for specific targets, I think it was successful definitely for us looking at the sororities and fraternities like Lalita mentioned, but then also the specific student organizations like say African Student Organization, National Association of Black Engineers, any sort of specific Asian Student Organization, International Student Organization. The universities have those contact information on your website, whether it's an HBCU or it's a majority school. All those things are available for contact. But then also partnerships with special organizations. For instance, Black Retail Action Group, Sponsors for Educational Opportunity, but then also T. Howard Foundation. T. Howard Foundation, they focus on specific internships for students who want to go into the media company. So having those partnerships with those organizations who also penetrate the campus for you as well. So you have that resource, and then you can then either figure out how to set up some kind of virtual event on a specific topic, maybe say it's just panel discussion. And then I like the new information that Lanita just shared. I'm definitely going to tap into that as far as getting resumes in, basically. So thank you for that, Lanita.
Yeah, I'm gonna use that too, actually, though. So. John and Connor, have you had any luck with the student groups that organize at different colleges, or what's been your strategy?
Yeah, my name's Connor Duffy. I head up global talent acquisition for Help Systems. We're a mid-sized software company. We've got about 1,200 employees in 22 countries. So we're fairly small from the employment side, large reach. One thing I think I want to segue on is to, I think it was Lalita's point about HBCUs being inundated right now. And I know exactly where she's coming on why that's a shame. I think one of the things you have to remember is engaging with non-HBCUs as well. I think right now, kind of let's call it, a lot of executive teams are now saying, okay, from a public standpoint, we need to be more diverse. They're looking at it from a PR perspective rather than a practical growth and frankly, ethical perspective. So you're getting a lot of people that are trying to go to the obvious points of contact. And obviously there's nothing wrong with that. That should be part of your diversity plan to go to all colleges. I mean, HBCUs, you may have trouble getting in line right now, especially if you're a smaller company like ours. So I also have found great success, obviously, internal groups, sororities, fraternities, but even just working with career services, working with professors at the colleges that you've traditionally recruited from, whether that's nationally, globally, or locally to your offices, and working with them to create avenues to have discussions with these kind of protected classes that we're looking to engage in our diversity numbers. So things you can do for practical effect, find your internal champions across the wide diversity. Kids will always kind of look to be treated as a professional, not a student. So engaging your hopefully existing diverse group of professionals to talk to them, not just about diversity concepts, but as fellow professionals. You have to remember that something I hear a lot, and it just kind of grates my ears, is when people say, we have to come up with a plan to recruit at HBCUs like it should be different than any other kid. You should have diversity options, but these are still 21-year-old men and women, and they are looking for the same things across all racial lines from a professional standpoint, personal standpoint, experiences in the workplace. That's where your internal kind of diversity councils, your D&I inclusion teams, your excellence centers, or whatever it is that you're doing internally can help make that experience better and offer it to more of a diverse culture. But I think some people are driving the needle too pointedly and forgetting about the fact that the University of Minnesota, which traditionally is a very white state, right next to our headquarters, is 22% minority. So you want to look at these options holistically and not just focus on what may be, frankly, what I kind of consider to be the low-hanging fruit from a diversity perspective.
Yeah, Connor, I think that's really interesting. I was chatting with both folks at Howard University last week and Spelman and Morehouse.
Atlanta's raining down requests right now, right?
Yeah,
Morehouse are right across the street from each other. They're probably looking out their windows saying, where was all this 5 years ago?
Yeah, look, they're on the same campus, right? And it's very interesting, as you mentioned, like it's such a new thing for most corporations that, I find it funny that sometimes when companies are creating their university recruiting D&I strategy for this year, they're putting like Spelman, but not Morehouse, and Morehouse and not Spelman, and not realizing that they're on the same campus, like some of the basic things, because it's so new. And look, I don't want to attribute malintent to any corporation. I want to make sure that we're making room for growth, right? And maybe with all the awareness that's going on this year, I think it's a fantastic thing that our HBCUs are getting so much attention. By the way, they also need your financial contribution, shameless plug, in addition to just internships for their students. So I think that the way that most folks, I know for sure at Howard and at Spelman and Morehouse are looking at it is that look, better late than never. And they're really happy right now to be receiving the gifts and the attention and sort of the recognition and really more than anything helping the students to get ahead. So I think that's really important. But Connor, I think that you mentioned a great point around utilizing other groups within majority schools as well, right? Because tapping on only HBCUs as your overall strategy is not sustainable. So John, have you had any experience with that?
Yeah, hi, my name's John Burke. I'm with Great Minds. We're an education company in the K through 12 space, employees in 49 states currently. And we just broke 1,000 employees a few weeks back.
Congratulations.
And yay. And so for us, overall from our recruiting strategy, this is our 4th year in a row of partnering with the local job network, which actually got purchased by Circa recently. Again, 4 years ago, we were a much smaller organization and looking for ways to make sure that we were, had a plan for diversity. And again, that was literally just the team of one. But the only place that we posted jobs, and you can locate that network if you just any state name followed by diversity.com, links you into their network locally. And at the time, we needed help making sure we were getting promoted in the minority groups, females, military, historically Black community colleges, universities, and thousands and thousands of organizations that we post with them, and that gave us access to that. And I think that, statistically, it's helped us attract a largely diverse candidate pool. And so as we've grown, we've continued to use them. They're still the only place we pay to post every single one of our jobs that gets posted there. And so I think that's been a strategy that's helped us over the course of the past years, specifically with the universities. Again, when we look at the universities for a couple of different, not just for interns or new hires. That's certainly one area, but for us, because we are largely 70% of our employees are current or 75 are current or former teachers, but 75% of them currently work on our academic teams. We hire a lot of teachers, and it kind of goes into the systematic issues that minorities are not well represented in schools. There's a smaller pool to go find and pull from. And it was kind of, I would say, an accidental strategy that helped us out on tapping into some of those networks a little bit stronger. And that was, we were actually looking for some statisticians, mathematicians, which is for the K-12 space can be a little niche. And we found that smaller schools had and community colleges would have people that were because they didn't have a department dedicated to working with their teachers. They often would just borrow from the math department. So they may not have taught in K through 12 schools, but they were teaching teachers. And so through that effort, we were able to identify additional schools with, I think the community college network often had a more diverse overall pool. And that helped us, again, increase the diversity on some of those teacher teams. Statistically, we've again, not as a long-term strategy, not a new strategy, but the statistics around percentage of African-American teachers, percentage of Asian teachers, et cetera, we've been able to surpass those numbers internally. Again, and I think that speaks to, again, I know a lot of organizations, it's, what are we going to do right now in this moment because of everything that's happened recently. But it goes to show that I don't think you can get really dynamic results in a short period of time because it requires so much buy-in and strategic planning, and it takes a long-term effort. If we would have just started on that, we wouldn't have had, our numbers wouldn't be reflective of that. So.
No, look, John, I'm in total alignment with you, especially when it comes to hiring, right? So we're talking about internships today, university recruiting, slightly different. But all of this really takes a full mentality shift in a lot of ways. It's so much deeper than just, where are we recruiting from, which I think is great, but it's almost worse. And sort of the conversations that I have with people very often are, it's worse if we're really committed to having a diverse slate of candidates, and then our conversion rate to full-time hire is like, we've had 7 folks from underrepresented groups, and then we hired the 8th one. Like, that's almost worse with a 1 or 2% conversion rate. So I'm totally with you. It takes so much more. And really, it takes more than just manager buy-in. I think that on the surface level, most people want to do it. And what prevents us from really reaching that next level is the bias, the not understanding of what systemic things need to change in order to get us to the next place, right? Whole bunch of things. But as far as like internships are concerned, I really like your methodology around this being sort of a long-term plan, that you've not just started and using resources that were effective way before the apocalypse that's 2020. And I, like you, been doing this before it was cool, So, I understand sort of the long-term implication and how long it takes in order to really sort of affect change. I'll tell you, one of the things that's been really effective for me is, and this is even outside of HBCUs, which again, I think are really an important factor in any sort of university recruiting strategy, but really utilizing the student groups in majority schools has been really effective for me. This year, for instance, we're a tech company, and I love that on these calls there's folks from all different types of industries, because we're going to get our candidates from different places, right? And we're going to find efficacy in different ways. But we're getting students this year from the HBCUs, but also from MIT, from Stanford, but what we've done is gone directly to the underrepresented student groups within those schools. A couple of different reasons. Previously, and I think like most people, we were using Handshake. Have you all had any experience using Handshake with the universities, and you just sort of post positions? And I see this came through as a question as well, so I'm kind of trying to incorporate the answer into what I'm saying. But we've used Handshake. Handshake is really effective just for posting positions, but we find that a more effective way is to create relationships with the schools, and specifically with the student groups in the schools, right? So like, how can we create a continual partnership that exists outside of the recruiting period for internships? And then, of course, when it's time to post internships, we need to post them. So we'll use Handshake, but really we've created a relationship, and we've already displayed ourselves as a great place to work and a great place for you to want to become an intern, and then hopefully hire afterward. So what's been your experience with Handshake, and also perhaps with creating relationships with the schools?
Christina, can I just pick up on a point that you made earlier? And I think it's going to answer your question here, which is, I fear that a lot of our appearances on campus have been very transactional. And, to pick up on something that John says, I think you need to play the long game with this. And I also want to pick up on something that you had said, which is these poor colleges and universities need money, right? So it's not just enough to show up on campus and say, we're going to hire your interns. These poor institutions who have been doing good work for generations need our support in different ways. And I think that's another way to play the long game.
Classrooms fallen apart at Howard.
Right. And think of Howard is falling apart. I mean, that's a travesty, right? And so I think we cannot, as employers, just show up on campus and say, yeah, we're going to hire your students. I think we need to sort of commit to a deeper relationship with them, which is much more collaborative. And so what we've done is we've stepped back from I try not to even show up on campus during career fairs. what we do is, to your point, really work with the student groups, make sure that we are being good corporate citizens and giving them classes. For example, we've just piloted a class with Norfolk State, which is in Virginia, where we are creating a one-year curriculum for their engineering students who are first generation. It doesn't cost a lot of money, but it's our way of showing that we're invested in the future of those students, right? We are looking at curriculum development. All of you have very specific skills needs. Professors love it when they have real life examples from your organizations as case studies. And if you can bring, some of your executives into the classroom to help teach the class, my gosh, the impact you have, right? The real life experiences that they're going to have in being able to talk to and work with some of your senior folks in your organizations. Again, another way to really show your commitment to sort of that pipeline, which is just not transactional and not just showing up and hiring. And in terms of Handshake, I'm going to be very transparent. Don't love it. I feel like it's a necessary evil to show up on campus, but the actual platform is just horrific. And I also don't like the fact that they are loosey-goosey with the student information. So I'm still trying to figure out, apparently they have the student information for 6 years afterwards, and I'm still trying to figure out. I apologize if anyone on this call loves Handshake, but
no, don't apologize. That's what this is for. And I want to be mindful of the time really quickly. Because look, y'all, all this time I've been thinking these sessions are an hour. So we've been going an hour. I want to be mindful of folks that need to jump off. We're going to continue the conversation. But just for people that need to jump off right now, I was hoping that we could go around the room real quick, mention one practical thing that people should do when they're trying to recruit for university, just so that the folks that need to jump off now have something to walk away with. I'll start. First thing, representation matters. Do not show up to a HBCU with only white folks on your panel. Do not show up to try to recruit women engineers with only men, right? You need to mind your tone and be aware of your audience. Next, who got next?
Treat them like the young professionals that they are.
Good.
And it's really all about relationships. Like you said, playing the long game, even if it's creating some sort of informational session to meet students on campus and get familiar with students, networking sessions with maybe some leaders of your organization, having a presence is always important. Definitely the building relationship is key to just basically long-term overall success.
Awesome, thank you.
And I think also having a plan for them, not just, oh, great, we hired them, and then there they go, and good luck to you. And I think knowing that you've got good systems in place for people when they start, whether it's a good solid internship program, if it's for an internship, if it's a new hire, if it's their first job, are you prepared to help them with first job woes and issues along the line too? Because you've got to be a part of their success beyond just hiring.
Excellent.
And if I could just jump on what John said, it's not just the responsibility for the attraction on the front end, it's on the retention on the back end. So what is your plan and sort of your intent with them once you bring them in the door?
Mm-hmm. Excellent, thank you. Have a great day to everyone who needs to jump off at 10:30. We're gonna keep it going now. Connor, sorry, I cut you off.
No, that's okay. I just wanna jump back. Everything Lolita said, I do agree with to a certain extent. I think one thing we have to be aware of is not everybody has the operational or the financial budget to do a lot of these things. And sometimes, tools like Handshake, while not the best, and now what we're seeing is a lot of course, vendors pop up that are screaming, increase your diversity initiatives, and just basically connecting you to things like Handshake. But I think one of the other things is if you are running a smaller recruiting department that doesn't have the dollars that say, the Microns or Universals of the world might have, don't feel bad that you have to take smaller steps. Smaller steps are positive as, too. The short term, the long game is, the recruiting game is a long game, right? And frankly, a lot of companies, it's kind of the old joke, well, we're recruiting fine. What do we pay you for? We're having diversity issues. What do we pay you for, right? We're very underappreciated overall. So, I think that keeping in mind what you can functionally achieve and setting small goals for yourself can really help to not only show your stakeholders that you're moving the needle forward, but also make you feel like you're doing best by your own team.
I think that's a good point. I think there's a lot of folks on the call today who don't have the resources in terms of actual bodies or money, and I'd love to delve into that a little bit because I think there's some low-hanging fruit that don't cost a lot of money and that don't take a lot of resources, that don't take a lot of people power, but does take intent and time, right? So it's that old adage, like, do you want a good, fast, or cheap, right? And it's kind of like the same thing. You pick two, and right now, if you don't have a lot of money and if you don't got a lot of people, then it's gonna take a lot of time, and you have to decide what you're willing to sacrifice to get there. And I'd love to get everyone's sort of input as to whether they were what they were able to do from a low-hanging fruit perspective that didn't take a lot of either. I can tell you right now, I've been working on our university recruiting strategy with one other person, and I've been teaching her how to create the strategy. And so it's only her and I. So we don't have a lot of people, and we didn't have a lot of money to put towards it. I think maybe we're spending $5,000 this year total, and that includes sponsorships to the student groups. And I will tell you one thing that COVID has done for us is it's evened the playing field a bit. So travel budget, where we would have to go to these schools and make an appearance, that's out the window. A lot of the events that they would have traditionally charged us to be a part of, out of the window. And so in a lot of ways, it's become easier almost this year. We've had to become more creative on how we're able to recruit students. But I'd love to hear a little bit, if you all have any ideas around how you've been able to establish programs for folks that maybe don't have a lot of money and don't have a lot of people.
In my past experience, informational sessions were very effective, reaching out to the career services, for instance, and just scheduling, conversation times with organizations. I think that's a start to just to kind of, get into knowing your environment and what your target is specifically. It definitely was effective for, a very small budget we had, where it was really pizza when we go on campus. But just when students have the information, they're excited to take action. So it was really about, making our presence known on campus at the time. So definitely, like I said, informational sessions, even networking sessions, discussing, maybe say, just about your company, the day in the life of, say, a senior manager for digital marketing. That was really hot at the time. So just having that even just that little bit, it helps to get your name on campus, whatever school you're at, if it's HBCU or a majority school, it doesn't matter. Students are always excited to want to be a part of, whatever company, and they most likely, if they have access to you, they will come to you. They will come to you, in my experience. So just, having that presence and saying, we're open to having a conversation, advise you about our company or let you know about our company, and these are the resources that we have to offer. More times than likely, it was a success in terms of how students approached us. So I think that's a start for just, if you have a very small budget, and how you go about informing students about your company. It helps because they will come to you for sure if they know that you are looking for them. I think.
I'm with you, Yvonne. It's like the same thing, right? If you ain't throwing coins, you better have time, and make the relationship. And look, ideally both, right? Like, throw us a couple of dollars, and I think folks just want you to sit down with them and create relationships. And I'll tell you, I think that's a fantastic long-term strategy too, because ultimately what you want is, you're only going to have a certain amount of internship spots. You're not going to be able to take everyone. But what you want to do is create a value proposition so that folks remember you and remember your company. And my thing is always, we want people talking about us in rooms that we've never seen, in front of audience that we've never known, right? And in a positive way. You don't do that by one-offs, right? You do that by creating relationships. And the goal is for folks to want to come work for you after they graduate, whether or not they were able to have an internship with you for a certain amount of weeks. So thank you for that. Anybody else have any experience with creating robust or semi-robust programs on a champagne program on a Kool-Aid budget?
Use the other divisions within your business. Take the operational expense and try to share it with other departments. If you've got a good human resources team, then recruiting, never mind DEI, should be a company-wide effort. So using your marketing teams, using your human resource teams to talk about, what different groups, genders, age groups are looking for in the sense of professional, being professionally competitive in a tough market. That's a way that you can take the subject matter expertise that already exists under your umbrella, have only operational expense and time expense to really kind of brainstorm and look at ways from, again, other subject matter experts to reach out directly to the target groups you're looking for.
Totally. And I would almost even say that double, right? So make sure you're utilizing the business when you're doing the recruiting for actual internships, because folks want to, look, it's fun talking to recruiters and all, but it's great when they can talk to somebody that's working in the area in which their majors. And then also once during the internship program, have real life interactions with folks from the business so that your interns have an opportunity to ask questions. And it feels like you're respecting more of their professional aspirations when they're able to have conversations with people who are doing what they want to be doing. So I think that's a great ad, Connor. Anybody else before we go into the lightning round that y'all didn't know about? Okay, so here's the deal. Before, all right, really quickly, I want to answer Catherine's question, which is how critical is it to create an internship program at a startup to attract talent? Anybody have any opinions on that? How critical is it?
Very.
Yeah, I was going to say, I come from the startup world. I've lived in it for the last 8 years, and with companies less than 300. And I would say, like Connor says, it's critical. It's really a pipeline. It's a workforce planning pipeline. So I would highly encourage you to do it.
Connor, you said very.
Yeah, I completely concur. I think that the other thing that you can sell, and I am looking at this from a bit of a STEM slant, so I apologize, is that you can offer them a lot more exposure and direct mentorship in a startup than you usually can in a larger environment, at least from a diversity of experience perspective. So starting up an internship program at a startup is an incredibly cost-effective way to start the pipeline. And there's a lot of value add that you can give in a proposition when you're standing in front of Microsoft and Oracle competing for talent.
Absolutely. The other thing I would say is one thing that I've seen to be really effective is that don't have the internship. Your ROI on your internship should go beyond just the student experience. Your ROI should really be with the eye of creating a returnship offer, which means that after they graduate, you'd like them to start at entry level. So it's a really fantastic way to start having underrepresented groups and other talent at your disposal. And especially from a startup perspective, usually you're small, right? You're going to need folks and you're going to need folks that are familiar with the culture of your company. You're going to need folks that you can trust. And an internship is a fantastic way to kind of try before you buy.
Can I just say one more thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
On internships, just remember, especially in a startup culture, they are not gophers. Do not treat your interns. I've seen too many startups treat them like free or extraordinarily cheap labor. You're not going to create a pipeline like that. So make sure you train your hiring managers and have that program in place before you start bringing in potential interns.
Totally. And that's a whole other conversation too, and like conversations to have around shifting the mindset internally for hiring managers and executives alike. And I think maybe we'll put that on the Q1 roster for next year. It's good. All right, y'all, we're going to do speed round. So here's the deal. Before the session today, people that are attending sort of put into the ether what they'd like for us to talk about. Some of the things we've covered, some of the things we haven't. So I'm going to just blurt out one of the things that folks said that they want to hear about, and let's talk about it if you have an opinion on it, okay? Ready? Your buzzers are ready? Okay, social media, more branding. Does anyone have any opinion on using social media for internships? I could talk a little bit. Oh, go ahead, Connor. Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, social media, there's an old quick story about a bank robber in the Great Depression, and his name was Willie something. He robbed over 100 banks, and they finally caught him. And as he's walking into the jailhouse, one of the media asked him, "Willie, why'd you rob all those banks?" And he said, "Because that's where the money is." Social media is where the money is right now. You have to make sure that you're connecting with the generations, with the groups of people, in the methodologies at which they're used to being contacted and communicated. Fighting against change in that respect is one of the worst things you can do from a recruitment planning standpoint. You have to understand where the money is, where the candidates are, whether it's in the depths of GitHub back in the day, or, wherever they are is where you need to be. And right now, it's not just Facebook and Instagram and, the major kind of networks that most people are on today. You really need to research smaller networks, smaller groups and areas of social media that are going to contain those profiles, whether it's from a diversity standpoint, from a skills standpoint, that are going to have what your company is asking you to find.
Mm-hmm.
For us, one effective social media strategy. I'm sorry?
No, I was just saying, go ahead, Cuba Gooding Jr., show me the money.
Exactly. One effective strategy for us for social media in the past was having what we call Twitter talks. Basically where we would basically just go on Twitter and announce to students at certain campuses and universities that we were on Twitter and wanted to have a conversation with them and see what that looked like. And that really definitely opened our eyes to a lot of other opportunities that helped us attract the demographic we were looking for. So that definitely helped us. So yeah, social media is definitely you have to have a strategy first of all, because not everything is going to garner you the result you want. So depending on what platform you're on, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, even now TikTok, how you want to strategize it, Snapchat, they've all changed depending on how you want to do it. So, but I think something that helps you get directly, in front of who you want to target, I think it helps. So for us, definitely Twitter Talks help to get us what we were looking for.
Excellent. Twitter Talks, good idea. Anyone else? Real quick, I'll just repeat what I said before. Your ROI on your internship program should not only lie in the students that you were able to come for your internship. Especially right now, while most things are virtual, you have the opportunity to have a much broader reach potentially than you would have had before. You have the opportunity to hire interns in places that perhaps you were not flying folks in previously and putting them up for housing. Right now, you don't have to, right? So they can stay where they are, and you have a much broader reach geographically speaking. Unless your company is a well-known national company, you have a prime opportunity for brand awareness here. And whether you use social media for that, and by the way, that absolutely has to be part of your branding strategy, but whether you use social media or other means, you want to remember that this is also a prime opportunity for the students that will not take internships, for you to create brand awareness in places where your company does not exist yet, right? So thinking about it from that perspective, make sure that your return is greater than the money that you're spending and the talent that you're getting just through your internships. We'll take one more. This one I find interesting. So folks want us to talk about, we talked about HBCUs, but folks want us to talk about working with community colleges to optimize our efforts. Anybody have experience with that? I think this is a good one.
I'll jump in here. I am someone who, as a student as well, I went to many universities. I had 8 before I got my first degree. So I've been to a lot of community colleges, and I kind of took the slower road through my 20s. And so again, I think from that experience, I think I generally kind of leaned into to that. And like I say, I think that we've been able to, find some niche things by looking in places that other people aren't looking. And it's led to some other opportunities too that have helped. I'm on the board at one of those colleges and for talent acquisition and corporate communication. And so we get to spend time with the university actually helping to steer what they're teaching their students in their business programs. And so we can, again, kind of just help get people ready. But I think community college is a great place to find. I think it's like anything, it's kind of much like the social media strategy. If you're not doing it, you're really kind of missing a big opportunity. For me, fortunately, I just let marketing take care of that. But with same thing with the community college. It's like if you need to look where. And again, it's not just where the money is. There's a little bit of money everywhere, I think, too. So I think that, again, you'll find some gems in places you weren't expecting it. People who've had to kind of dig hard and work hard and fight through a lot of things, they tend to show up ready to roll, and they want to learn, and they've already kind of fought through some challenges, and they're ready for the next one, is what I found.
Totally. And I would say in this year of 2020, a lot of times when we're talking about diversity this year, most people are thinking about ethnic diversity, right? They're thinking about Black people first, they're thinking about Latinx next. And we also want to really just emphasize that socioeconomic diversity is also incredibly important. Diversity of thought is incredibly important. And those are some of the things that you'll find going to community colleges. If you're in the LA area and you are looking for a really good program for your tech internships, if you're a tech company or you have a tech department and you're looking for tech internships, might I recommend to you STEM Advantage, STEM Advantage. It is a nonprofit that focuses on the Cal State University groups, folks that are going to Cal State colleges, and only folks that are majoring in STEM, so science, technology, engineering, and math. A great way. They don't charge any money. They do ask that you actually pay the interns, and that free internship. I don't think that's out of the ordinary these days. But STEM Advantage is a really good starting place if you want to get some really great candidates from community college. Who else? Anyone? All right. Well, I want to be mindful of the time. We've already gone 21 minutes over. Thank you to everyone who stayed engaged with us for all of this time. I hope that you've enjoyed our conversation and that you feel a little bit more confident about what your recruiting strategy is going to be. The last words that I'll leave you with is, I think the overall efficacy of a diversity and inclusion strategy is when there's not one, meaning that when it becomes part of your DNA, so that these D&I elements are in the regular business strategy. Once we get to a point where we don't have to have a university recruiting and a diversity recruiting strategy, once we get to the point where we don't have to have a business strategy and a D&I strategy, then we know we're winning, right? When it becomes just as much a part of breathing as getting financial budget, which is a part of any strategy, right? And so let's all work towards making sure that the diversity and inclusion parts of what we're doing become sort of the main and the only way to do things. And until next month, we'll see you again, second Tuesday of every month, 10 a.m. I'm Christina Sharif. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you to the panelists.
Thank you, Christina.
Thank you. Bye.